and welcome back to Shelve Your Boots. I'm Katie, the face behind Shelve Your Boots, and this week we've got the other half of the partnership of Cognitio Connect. That is John, the hardest man to get hold of in NATO. I think is easily to say.
Not sure about that. Cheers, Katie. I'm not sure that's true, but I'll take it as a compliment. Thank you.
But yeah, if you could give an intro, because you're quite well known within the Ink Corps world, but we've got people from other corps and regiments, so give a little intro of yourself.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So as Katie says, I'm John Dee. I served in the Intelligence Corps for 35 years. And I joined as a soldier, so as a private soldier, and I was very lucky that when they kicked me out or when I retired, I finished as a lieutenant colonel, and I have a lot of people along the way to thank for that. So great career, thoroughly enjoyed it, but it's in the rearview mirror now.
Yeah, you did the whole 9 yards, the whole.
Certainly did, much to my surprise, and probably to my to many people's surprise, actually, to be honest. It was interesting because we were just talking before about training and all the rest of it, and how I remember when I turned up in training in the mid 80s, 1980s that is. And we had a squad of 100.
Yeah.
We had a squad of 100, and very quickly it sort of got whittled down. 6 months later, there were, I think, about 18 of us, 18 or 20 people. Interestingly, of that squad, there were 3 lieutenant colonels that fell out of it, which is quite unusual. Yeah. And I cannot imagine for a second that the training staff had anything whatsoever to do with that. It was just the way it sort of felt. But yeah, had a enjoyable career. Lots of stuff going on. Lots of really interesting stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. So like towards the end, you say you surprise yourself at how far you get, because I never got to the LE level. I didn't even really look at it. Does it when it gets to that point, is it almost like a surprise of, well, actually, I've got a couple more years here. I've got a couple more years here. Is it like the inevitable seems to kind of go further and further away? So then when you actually do leave, you almost don't believe that it's happening.
Completely. I mean, I didn't believe it was ever happening. And the system then, and I guess it's a mindset as well, but the system had a great way of sort of keeping you on, keeping the carrot at the end of the stick going. If you do this, you can do that, the next one. But actually, I was doing some really interesting stuff. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not just going to look back with rose-tinted glasses and think it was all great. I don't think anyone would expect that, because there were some really, really difficult times. There were some terrible jobs, some really challenging periods as well. But actually is what shaped me to get to where I finished up, if I'm honest. And I think the combination of all those external forces was really positive. And I know lots of people would look at, in our case, the Intelligence Corps, and say that they have a lot to be grateful for, or perhaps a lot to sort of question. I would never do that, because actually I think it's very much an individual's perspective. I think there are lots of people that are always looking for excuses rather than looking in the mirror. And I remember there were some challenging jobs that I had to face, and the only person that could get me out of it and support me was me. I mean, I had a great team around me, but actually it required a fair degree of personal resilience.
Yeah.
And I think that is one thing that life in the military, particularly in the army, has really, really shaped me. Because not only do you have the fact that every couple of years you're changing jobs, and then you're having to meet more people, you're going in between that, you could be sent away for long periods of your time as well. You're then doing a completely different job. You're having to learn a variety of cultures, a variety of new things, new equipment, new practices, processes, everything. It's thrown at you all the time. And I guess one thing you do realize is very quickly how much you can absorb. And I completely understand some people perhaps have difficulty with that, and it can be a challenge. But I think, for me personally, it's one thing that I feel now when I look back on, that it has made me far more resilient, personally resilient. than perhaps I might have been had I not joined the army, if I'm honest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah, that makes complete sense. I think we do look at challenges very, very differently, and I think coming out this side, because I joined when I was like 24, so I'd already had jobs and all the rest of it in it and been exposed to having like a normal working life. Joined the army, came out, and I've noticed definitely my mindset of how to approach a problem or a challenge is very different to A, how it was, but B, how it is with everyone else around me who hasn't been
Mm,
exposed to that environment. And yeah, I think you become very resilient and very kind of just happy with problems. It's not going to be smooth. It's not going to be the best. I've got a direction,
absolutely.
which kind of
Yep.
rubs up against like the corporate, like we need a really good plan. Yeah, we
Mm,
just need a direction and we'll figure it out
direction.
along the
Yeah.
way kind of thing because it's going to go wrong at
Completely.
various
Yeah.
different
Of course.
places. And I think we're less nervous of that than I think people that haven't been
Absolutely.
exposed to those environments.
Oh, completely. And you know what? And that's what employers like, because it's the old sort of Barack Obama mantra of get stuff done. I mean, he used another word, but I won't use that on here. But get stuff done, and that's what we do for the most part. You know, you have a task. And we probably call it in military speak mission command. You know what the commander's intent is, and you just have the ability to go off and do it. And within the resources and the constraints, the guardrails as much as possible, but you know what's required, and you go off and do it. And I think the challenge that some people have perhaps outside, and particularly civilian employers as well, is that they're dealing with an entity that perhaps they don't necessarily have to provide that level of top oversight that they might do with some of their other employees. And stuff just gets done without actually too much of a fuss. That's why veterans are in demand, because they add value to businesses, of course.
Yeah, definitely. I do. Yeah, I do think we have just a very different outlook and way to get things done, and we don't get stopped at the first no a lot of the
Mm,
time.
no,
We
100%.
find
Yeah.
a different path,
Mm,
and then you get
yeah.
that kind of look of, well, how did you manage that? You just start talking to people and you just make it happen. We do have that tendency, I think, just to figure it
Mm,
out and just find the path of least resistance to make it happen.
yeah, completely. And the other thing you're talking about, the idea that, I did a little bit longer than you, but, you do become institutionalized. And I know for me, 35 years, nearly 35 years it was petrifying leaving, actually, if I'm honest. And I can remember, and you'll know this individual, the core Padre, Padre Clive,
Legend.
an individual very close to our hearts, of course. I can remember in my last few months up in the core headquarters in Chicksands, and him and I went for a walk, a dog walk, funny old thing. And he said to me, actually, he said, leaving the organization for after as long as you have, it's a bit like a bereavement, because you have had this umbilical cord attached to you for so long that all of a sudden you turn around and it's not there,
Yeah.
of course, and you're on your own. And I think for some people that is a really, really challenging prospect.
Yeah.
And but if you come out on the outside with a view that you are continually comparing what has gone on, what's in the rearview mirror, if you like, to what's in front of you, I think, you are going to struggle. It's a real mindset challenge. If I had any piece of advice for anyone, I would always argue that you've got to just look ahead, think about what's in front of you, forget about what's behind you. That isn't going to change. I mean, it all sounds great, very philosophical coming from me, but actually, I've been doing this since I left now for 6 years, nearly 7 years, and it is all about what's in front of you. That growth mindset, whatever made you and helped shape you to get you where you were in the army or whatever part of the defense you were in, it has, it is definitely behind you now, and it's created you. It's made you the individual you are, and you've got to use that to your advantage. But yeah, interestingly, I think for me personally, and everyone will have their own stories, of course, but for me personally, I realized I thought I'd made the transition quite well when one of our, for the technology company that I worked for, we had an engineer. And when he was surprised to discover actually I was a lieutenant colonel in the army, this was like 2 or 3 years later. And I took that as a real compliment,
Yeah.
actually, because I thought, it could have gone a lot worse. He was really surprised that I was actually in the, at that level. But actually, no, he was just surprised that actually the sort of individual that I am and what I was doing and where I was at. Perhaps I wasn't what he would have seen as stereotypical lieutenant colonel look like. And I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I at one point it was during COVID pretty much, I had to sort of jump jobs, ended up working back at Chicksands as a contractor, and I remember trying to dress to the point that would make an RSM implode. Because for me that was like, yeah, I'm definitely looking nothing like a Scotty
No, no,
anymore.
of course not.
If
Of
I
course
can
not.
see a
Because you
twinge
don't have to.
as I
No,
walk
of
past an
course not.
RSM, then I've achieved my goal, kind of thing. But what I find interesting, because I think you are the first person I've spoke to who has done, private to Ellie for that amount of time that I've
Mm,
spoke to.
mm.
What does transition support look like for a lieutenant colonel? Is it the same as what like a corporal's getting?
Yes, 100%. It's no different.
No different.
No different whatsoever. I think there is a perspective that, and I'd been a junior NCO, senior NCO, warrant officer. I'd done all of that. And there was a perspective that perhaps, officers perhaps know something else. There's absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah.
I think the difference is that, I had a slightly more robust network. I also, if I'm honest, my wife was a regional resettlement officer for the RAF as well. And she, to be fair, she'd said to me when I was in my last 2 years, and I was doing a particularly challenging role as the Corps Chief of Staff at the time. And she'd said to me, "You'll be just like the rest of them. You'll leave it all to the last minute. You won't do anything." And I thought, well, I took that as a bit of a challenge, if I'm honest. And so I made sure that I got as much out of the career transition workshop as I possibly could. I used it all to my advantage. I also used my enhanced learning credits as well, which are not a resettlement tool. But of course, when you're going through your service, life is just a bit too busy and you probably don't get the opportunity to use them. Whereas when you're entering resettlement, you've got the opportunity then to perhaps a little bit more of an investment in yourself and think about what you're going to do outside. But for my part, I went through the career transition workshop, and do you know what? It's not perfect. It is not perfect at all, and I think it would be quite easy, quite frankly, for me to come on here to complain about this, that, and the other. And you know, it's designed to meet a particular threshold of support. What I would always say is it's a homogenous structure that is designed to sort of meet people's needs across a very broad spectrum, which is impossible. And there are aspects to it which are really, really useful. And I'm sure those that have been through it will, if they're honest, testify to that. But there are other aspects which you think, that's just of no use to me at all. And you tend to sort of go away, and those are the only stories that you tend to hear, if I'm honest, particularly on LinkedIn. Um, and so out of all of that, and I'll be honest with you, it's one of the reasons that, along with Steve, that we set up Cognitio Connect, because we recognized that there was a gap in the market, a gap in the level of support
Yeah.
for specialists from across defense. And we just felt it could be better.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the transition support, I got nothing else that anyone else would do. I think it was slightly more challenging for me because I had other, significant personal stuff going on in my life, as well as leaving the army and having to grapple with all that, as well as find my way out was difficult. But yeah, I do it. You just got to crack on and do it. Because what's the alternative?
Yeah,
You know, what's the alternative? You have to, I had to work. I have, my sons were just about to start out on a university career, and we all know how expensive that can be. And I needed to work, actually. There was no point me sitting back and resting on my laurels. And so and I would say to everyone, don't wait for people to come to you. You've got to get out there and hunt for it. So,
yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that's always been the main theme since starting this last year is that
mm,
networking and having those conversations with people and getting you just putting yourself out there. Like you say, it's not going to come to you. You've got to put yourself out there on a bit of a limb.
I'll be honest with you, Katie, and I think when so Steve and I, when we set, we'll perhaps roll back a bit and the sort of the background behind Cognitio Connect a little bit. So we started off a couple of years ago. I was originally supporting, I was a trustee on the Core Association board, and I'd been asked to run ICAREC, which was the cause sort of resettlement and employment cell, but it was all voluntary, of course. And so when I was asked to do it, I did a review and brought a number of people in to look at essentially refreshing the approach. And I just looked at what we were doing and I thought we could do a lot better. We could do a lot better. Now, that wasn't profiting at the expense of our people at all, because that's not what it's about. But it was professionalizing the support that we provided. And so Steve and I then had a conversation about essentially creating a business in doing this, and hence the genesis of Cognitio Connect. But the overarching imperative, if you like, a part of our business plan was always that our people would come first, and everything we do for them is at the very heart of what we do. And so we provide free mentoring, we provide free specialist job placement support. We also operationalize the network as well, because as you rightly say, when you've got, young Tommy Atkins or Gilly Atkins or whoever it is who's looking around, if they're under pressure to get a job,
Yeah.
they've got screaming kids or they've got all sorts of stuff going on in their lives. For us to find I guess, to use someone who's been through that and is able to offer objective support and a completely objective advice and help them in a manner that they understand. We understand their background. And between Steve and I, we've got nearly 70 years worth of service experience. We've served in virtually every theatre that the Corps and the Army have placed us up until 2019, actually, to be honest. And so, certainly in every environment across the spectrum of employment. And so we don't need to know what they've done. Quite frankly, Katie, I'm not interested. I'm not interested. It's my interest and our interest is all about helping them as they transition to their next career. And I think the other thing I'd also like to address as well is the idea that what we've done is in some way encouraging people to leave.
Yeah.
Because I think for anyone that knows me, who served with me, and certainly in my last 2 years of service, will know that that is that just goes against everything that I stand for. I would love for our people to spend their entire lives in the Corps, but life isn't like that. The pressures that people face are considerably different to those of us that joined the Army 40 years ago. And so people leave and they need support. And if we help them to leave well, or maybe even leave better, then job done.
Yeah.
And those people leave, they go out and they'll be our biggest recruiting sergeant, And so that's something which we wanted to do. And since its inception about 2.5 years ago now, we've supported over 250 people. We provided pro bono mentoring call support. We've placed a few of those because we have we have costs to cover. We have Microsoft licenses to pay for and TNS to cover, and no one's going to cover that. So we need to sort of commercialize it, but we're not profiting at the expense of our people. sorry, and the last thing to add, I know I've banged on quite a bit now. Sorry.
Yeah, you're
The
right.
last thing to add is we started off just supporting the intelligence corps, and then I got a message from a young lad who was RAF, sat next to an analyst at Witten, basically saying, "Look, you're helping my mate. Can you help us?" And actually, we thought, well, why not? Why are we just limiting ourselves? Because particularly with, you'll see in the news, the military intelligence service now forming up, is everyone, they're all doing the same jobs, give or take. And they all know one another. And actually, we now support the tri-service military intelligence community or defense intelligence community.
Yeah.
And it's really rewarding as well.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's genuinely really rewarding, Katie, when you have someone who is getting out, they may be medically discharged. We don't, the circumstances surrounding all of that are personal to them.
Yeah.
We just want to try and take the pressure off them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
just rewarding as well.
I think that's the thing is it, and it's not just our core, and I found it across the board of tri-service. There's this pockets within the services that are really like, no, you can't look at that, you can't leave. But as we've said on here before, everyone leaves eventually.
They do.
Everyone leaves eventually, and it would, and we were talking before this call as well, and sort of where this is going in terms of this podcast. It would be nice to change that mentality, and I'm no way naive enough to think that it will happen, but it would be nice to change that mentality to support soldiers within the services with that mentality of you're going to leave eventually, so invest in yourself while you're here, rather than you can't do that because you might leave because of it. That shift, I think, would be a nice thing to see to help support people, because then they're set up for the transition 10, 15, 20 years before they leave.
Completely.
And to be honest, they might stay longer because they're getting that education, they're getting that investment while they're having a great career in the services as well. So yeah, that side of it does sort of blow my mind a little bit. After sort of the time you've gone through transition yourself, and you've done like the ICA side of things, and gone. You and Steve have just gone, no, there's a better way of doing this. Once you sort of broke away and did that, what in the last sort of few years you've been doing, what has really surprised you that you didn't really expect when you stepped into that world? Was there a common theme that was happening that you didn't even really realise was a thing? With the
Well, yeah, no. I think we always knew that the skills that people from the military intelligence community have would be required on the outside. I think one thing that really did surprise me is there was almost there, and this does not apply to everyone, but there's the sense of entitlement that some people feel when they do leave. The idea that their skills are in demand and so they can just simply land into a job. Okay. And I have been really surprised that, throughout my army career, there was that sort of messaging that, your skills are in demand outside. And I don't think that helps actually, because, in some respects that's forcing people to look at what's over the fence. And
but almost
I would, completely. And so when you have individuals who then who've decided for whatever reason that they want to leave, they want to move on, the sense of entitlement that some of them feel about what they're going to earn, what they're worth, it's been quite surprising. Now, at the other end of the scale, you also get those that don't know their worth as well.
Yeah.
And and one thing that Steve and I have done for them, and we always enjoy this, is when you talk to an individual and you look at their background and they're considering whatever career it is. I have no idea. And what we do encourage them to do is to take
the dog and the cat are about to have a tantrum. So I'm trying to be the teenage rebellion happen. The dog is adamant, the cat is trying to steal his bone.
Brilliant.
That has never
Okay.
happened in 5 years,
Okay.
but she is adamant that one day it might happen
Got it. Okay. Okay.
to prevent a kerfuffle.
But yeah, the one thing we want to do is we encourage them to take a leap rather than just a jump.
Yeah.
And so we help them translate their skills for a civilian audience. We help them prepare for their interviews. We help them shape their response, all of that sort of stuff. Because clearly we want them to get the role.
Yeah.
Ideally, they'd be a client that we're supporting, but actually that doesn't happen as often as we would like. But it's getting better, actually. It's getting better because people are now coming to us for more and more people are coming to us for that support. And I go back to what I said earlier, actually, to be honest, it's incredibly rewarding. And when you have someone who's been medically discharged, they're out in a few weeks, and for whatever reason, no one has signposted them to us, and then we galvanize our effort to really mobilize all resources to try and support them as best as we can.
Yeah. I think that is something that has surprised me over the years as well after leaving is the side of people that don't realise their capability, and you look at their career, so you've done amazing things, and then like there's been times I've scrolled through jobs and gone, this job is written for you, and they're like, no, it's not, I can't do half this stuff. What are you
Mm,
on about? You've written
mm,
half this stuff that they're telling you to do. You
yeah,
created this, and they basically nicked it and used it for themselves. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it
Uh,
does it. And I don't know where it comes from, and I don't know where it stems from, but it is mind blowing, especially 20-odd-year careers that have just been incredible,
mm,
and they come out and go,
yeah. I think the other thing I would also add to all of that as well is the number of times we've seen the strategic corporal. We've seen those individuals who are, I think, perhaps I'm not going to say I wouldn't wish to say they're exaggerating their influence, but again, with the benefit of someone who's been in this environment, and we're looking at this going, I see, okay, so you've been helping to shape UK counterterrorism policy, have you? Advising the Prime Minister. That's impressive. Excellent. Okay, I mean I've just made that bit up, but there is an element of that, and
yeah,
I do think that actually they need to keep their feet on the ground, but equally you've got to sell yourself, and the number of times, and certainly with the employment clinics that we run, I mean the one coming up in Google we've got on the 12th of March, which is full, oversubscribed. Um, we have a young, I think she was a sergeant, or she might have been a senior corporal who was medically discharged and did nothing. Actually, her resettlement was awful.
yeah,
And she tells the story to because what we are very keen to do is to sort of reinvest that experience for the benefit of the next tranche of people, of service leavers.
yeah,
And don't sit there and don't rest on your laurels. It is a battle. It is a targeting operation. You have got to really lean on your network. You've really got to approach it as if you were on an operation. It can be exhausting. It can be debilitating. But actually, leaning into organizations or to companies like myself and Steve at Cognitio, we can help them, and we want to help them. And even if that is just dragging someone else in from the network, the broader network, who might be able to advise them. I mean, you won't be surprised to hear I won't name any names, but I've been helping an LE lieutenant colonel who'd recently left the Corps as well in the last 6 months, just using my network to help him. So, very good friends with a very senior civil servant who is always complaining about the quality of applications that he gets from service leavers. So I said to him, I said, okay, can you have a chat with this bloke and advise him on how he could put his application together? Things like that. This morning, we had a in-course service leaver who wants to get into tech sales.
mm,
Well, interesting. I mean, that's the world in which I live in every day outside of for my day job. So my sales director at Summer, or solutions director, I'm sorry, he's called now, at Summerford Associates, has agreed just to spend 30 minutes with this young lad to talk to him about what life is like in tech sales. And it's using that to best effect is where we see real positives. And you know what? As I go back to what we were saying earlier, if nothing comes of that, then we're not that bothered.
Yeah.
We're not bothered at all. As far as we're concerned, we've helped an individual, and who knows where that individual will go next, or who his network or her network is. It's about providing that a different layer of support, and that goes back to what I was talking about. Why with Icarec, where there was a perception of it just needed a bit of a pull through. I think my predecessor had done a tremendous job of raising the level, and I just think we just took it to a different level and then recognized the opportunity. That's all. So, which is what we're doing now.
Yeah, and I think you're right in what's said on the inside is, we're in demand and this, that, and the other on the outside. But I think with conversations I've certainly had with people, there's a realization that happens when you get out that intelligence means something very different on the outside, and no one really understands what you did. So you can put all the bells and whistles on your CV, but it means absolutely nothing to the person reading it. And I've seen a lot of people fall foul of getting into an int role that they thought was an int role, and it's not an int role.
You're right. I mean, that's right. Translating business intelligence to what we would know as intelligence, completely different. Completely different. I mean, Steve always uses a number of sort of analogies with individuals and their ability to understand the East Caribbean methanol market, and understanding what various other factors and various other things mean in business intelligence or business analysis terms. We do not have that at all, unless you've got someone who's got economics, significant economics degree or PhD. Our guys just don't have that. But what they do have, our guys and girls, sorry, what they do have are skills, the softer skills, actually, if I'm honest, softer skills, as well as a level of analytical skills, where you put all of that into a bucket, and hey presto, your employers use that to really, really admire those qualities. But if they just have a particular perspective that they want to get out, they want to do some form of intelligence related work that perhaps they were doing in uniform, well, the opportunities to do that are more narrower and outside of government, certainly. I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, looking back on sort of the skills and things that I had when I was in compared to what I use while I'm out, there's a very particular few set of skills, none of which are they really intelligent skills, but it is the analytical ability. It is the ability to take on a wealth of information, process it, categorize it, understand it, regurgitate it in a manner that other people can understand. I think that's a real key skill that we have, that we can take something that's very complex and deliver it to an audience that haven't got a clue whatsoever. And I think really the biggest thing, because I work in sort of international trade and customs compliance and imports, exports, the biggest help I've had is because we wrote in, JSP, we wrote the kind of policy in that language of policy. My job revolves around reading policy that's written by government, which is quite a recognised language for me to read. Give it to someone else, it's just absolute jargon, the way it's written half the time. But for us, we're so used to living and breathing within JSP that it's a very familiar language that you instantly know where to look, how to read it, how it's formatted, everything, because it's still civil service. It's still that policy, which is one thing that has surprised me, that I've ended up that's one key thing that I've absolutely hated writing in that format, but I'm really glad I learned it, because it's really helped me on the outside. So
All
Yeah,
those skills that you picked, all those skills that you've picked up and now you're applying, but proving to be useful for you, which is terrific,
yeah.
isn't it?
And like you say, the bouncing about every couple of years, new job, new role, new
Mm.
mission, new everything. Digest, pick it up, carry on, keep going. Don't drop the ball and make it look
Mm.
smooth.
Yeah,
I think is just again something we're very very good at. And so when new projects
absolutely.
come
Yeah.
along, we become very calm,
Yeah.
collected. Yeah, we'll get it done.
Mm.
And everyone's like, what? It's like, yeah, we're
Yeah,
used
yeah.
to this.
Absolutely. I think the other thing I'd like to sort of talk about, if I can, is, and we were talking about marketing yourself, and the idea that you get to a point in as everyone will, whether you're a junior NCO or a 3 or 4 star officer, you get to a point in your lives where actually you're no longer wearing uniform, and you have to think about life outside. And for some people, they may well be secure. They may well not want to do anything else. They may well want to stay in an environment that they're very familiar with from their military service. So whether that's on FTRS through whatever it is. But actually, the vast majority of people between those two ends of the spectrum want to get out and get themselves another job. And and it's interesting. Yeah, again, we were talking offline earlier on about the approach that some people have to LinkedIn. LinkedIn is unquestionably the platform of choice to get yourself another job. I would say in in 90% plus of cases, LinkedIn is used as a medium through which people find jobs. And I say that because it's a professional networking site, of course it is, but it's the way in which you get yourself out there. And there's always a reticence from people who are particularly serving in the intelligence community, which I completely understand, why they would wish to create a profile. Because for whatever reason, they seem to think that they are suddenly going to be targeted by a foreign intelligence service. Well, of course they are if they write down everything they've done in their entire career and include all of their contact details. Oh, and by the way, make sure you put your bank account details and your PIN on there as well, because that will prove really, really useful. But of course, it's not like that, is it? Most of these people will have other social media accounts. If they don't, other members of their family certainly will do, so they'll feature in them. And I think marketing yourself using LinkedIn and do it. I would always advise people as well to start early doing that, because it is your network, and people will talk about this, people will say this, but your network will get you a job.
Yeah,
And the only way you can build that network, or one of the biggest ways of building that network, is through LinkedIn. And so a bit of a plug, of course, Katie. I have a We run a closed LinkedIn site for our community, and we post jobs into there,
yeah,
and people post their experiences into there because we're reinvesting. Now, what we're not trying to do is encourage anyone to leave. What we are trying to do is to help them prepare for the time they leave.
yeah,
And in fact, I would always say, well, because we get approaches probably like you and like many other people, we get approaches all the time. We will only support those people that have made that decision and have signed off. But that they are at liberty, of course, to scroll through all the jobs on LinkedIn, not just on our site, but on any recruiting site, of course, and there are loads of them.
yeah,
Um, so I just think start early, build your network, and start to. I think using the RAF used to apply this mantra that from the moment you join, you prepare yourself to leave,
yeah.
because otherwise, don't end up like me and wait until the last 2 years, and then you've got a bit of ground rush and you've got lots of time to make up. But I do think actually the current crop, the current generation, they're far more adept at doing that than I ever was. I absolutely, they are very, very good at getting on there, getting out there, understanding and looking at what the next step is. So, and if you try to do that, then of course we will be there to try and help you as best we can.
Absolutely. I've always said LinkedIn, it's very much or very similar to buying a house, that you start to stalk the website of, well, what's in the area, what value is it, what does it look like, is that overpriced, is it underpriced? And LinkedIn's exactly the same in terms of the jobs
Yeah.
board, and it's always worth, like you say, getting on early to build the algorithm, start
Mm.
adding people that you know or have left or in an area that you're interested in, to start seeing if it's actually what you want to do. But I think it's also a really good way of looking at people that you maybe have served with that have left, to see what their career path has looked like. It might raise things that you never even thought of doing, like,
Completely.
IT sales, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
have to do the project management or the cyber security, or I
Mm.
think as a core we're very, very versatile. If you I've always said to friends of mine, because I was very conscious of making my CV very, civified,
Mm.
and try and, remove any kind of full on military side of it. But I was very aware that just because my CV was very weird and it had Incore on it, that would probably get me in front of someone that might
Mm.
have not even looked at my CV twice without that, because they're just nosy at the end of the day.
Oh, completely.
And if you
Yeah,
can
they are. Yeah.
get in the room and sell yourself, then at that point,
Mm.
great. But it's yeah, what do you want to, where do you want to do that, and how do you want to? And I think the only way of doing it is getting on LinkedIn early and just browsing the market to see, and you might be a case of you doing a job as well. And I've spoke to Incore people that have really smashed the, get the education while they're in, where they've done roles and they've done the military qualification, and then they've instantly looked what civilian qualification is the same or
Mm.
similar to what I've, and they've earned that through their career, which has meant the path out for them has been a beautiful transition. But you won't know that until you look at what the market's actually doing and what it's interested in, and what people have got
Yeah.
like feathers in their hat to say
I think.
qualification wise.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the other thing as well is that veterans do help veterans, and those people that are out. I never cease to be amazed by the level of support veterans are prepared to offer for one another, and it's really, really heartwarming actually, because they recognize, as we said right at the beginning, we've all been through that process. We recognize how traumatic it can be for some,
Yeah.
and just having someone who can just say, look, it's going to be all right, actually, and we will sort it. We will help. I know someone, or I'll send you here, or make sure, have you done that, or stuff like that. That is really, really important. And I'm continually sort of impressed, and as I said, find the whole thing sort of heartwarming, how robust the veteran network is,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. I think I see it quite a lot, especially this side, and that whole networking thing. And I think the first time sometimes you reach out to someone once you start leaving is probably the most nerve wracking, because you're not sure what sort of reception you're going to get. But then I think once you just do that first step and realize people will absolutely reply, and if they can't help you, they'll soon put you on to someone that
Mm.
can. And you start the ball rolling at that point. The more you put that off, I think, the more you back yourself into a corner where you might find yourself in a position where you are out on a limb on your own at that point, and then it becomes increasingly
It
difficult
becomes really difficult. Yeah,
along
it does.
with the time.
But you're never alone.
But no, you're never alone, never alone. It's always worth just doing that kind of, cold call message in the inbox to say, I am looking at leaving. You got any advice or whatever? And I've never heard of anyone say, no, no, no
No, me too.
advice. You're on your own, kid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of Cognito, like, what's the plan for this year? Because I know we've spoke sort of over
Well,
a couple of months that you've got events going on, and you're
we
actually
have.
building your network even more for that.
We have actually. We have. So yeah, so we were lucky in the beginning of this year. We had our first strategic advisory board meeting,
Yeah,
and we were very lucky that we've got four exceptional individuals that have agreed to basically help and advise us. So, we have Major General Sarah Johansson, who's just retired from the army or in the process of retiring. We have a former senior Foreign Office individual called Nigel Dakin, who's also ex-intelligence corps as well. And we have Dan Worms, who runs his own recruiting company in the city as an entrepreneur and businessman, a real force of nature. And then we have a real, I'd say, someone I've met in my day job with Sutherford Associates, who's a guy called Stephen Owen. Stephen is a very prominent chief information security officer in the city. He has a long pedigree of cybersecurity and technical excellence and has no military connection whatsoever, but has agreed to help us. And so we are this year, I think, consolidating on our position. We are continuing to build those links into the corporate world. And you mentioned as I mentioned earlier, we've got an employment clinic at HQ Google at King's Cross on the 12th of March. As I said, it's heavily oversubscribed. It's full now. We were limited in numbers for this one. But we've already been approached by HSBC to run one in Sheffield later this year, and we're also planning another one in Moody's again towards the end of September. And again, all of those are all absolutely free. Because of the numbers on the Google one, we had to stipulate that the priority would be given to those that have signed off. But actually, that for the subsequent events, that's not the case. And if people want to help prepare themselves, then we should, as soon as we post the details into the closed group about the when and where, then just get in touch and we'll add you to the attendance list. But they're a great way of, again, reinforcing that sort of veteran mantra of it's all run by veterans within these organizations, with the exception of Moody's. Actually, they're not veterans. They just really like what we're doing, but it's all free, and we are hugely grateful for that. And we're going to continue to do those because they're a great medium to help our people prepare. And then and hopefully, as I said, in sort of parallel with that, we're growing our links with other organizations, because what we want to do, of course, is to have loads of jobs that our people can fall into, but the right sort of jobs. We're not just talking any old jobs. These are only ones that meet our threshold and that are specifically for people with our skills. And so, so that's our plan for the rest of the year, really. And beyond that, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I have no idea, Katie, and I don't think if Steve was on here, we would have no idea.
So,
and when we sat in the city in this boardroom earlier this year and had our first board meeting, courtesy of Dan Worms, by the way, Oyster Partnerships, little plug for him, and his boardroom. We had to pinch ourselves because 2 years down the line, we could never have imagined we'd be at this point.
No.
Never. And yet we've just devoted a lot of time and effort to, to filling a gap that we saw in the market to make sure that we improve the level of support that we do for our people, all of our people, and also growing the community as well, which is really important to us.
And what it seems to be as well is industries are getting quite excited by the gap that you're filling. Is it coming across? It's something they weren't overly aware of, or they were, but
they weren't. No, they weren't aware. And I think, and this is what I go back to one of the original points, is actually there were many organisations that wanted to profit at the expense of our people. And interestingly, I was talking to another lieutenant colonel that we're helping yesterday. He was talking about how he had a job interview, and when they were talking about salaries, the company had said, well, of course, you've got your pension. And I went, as soon as he said that, that's a red flag to me. I mean, that just would drive me mad. It absolutely is. And they see veterans as an opportunity to be exploited. They come in cheap, they exploit their skills, and then they move on to the next one. And for me, that would be, if an organization said that to me during an interview, that would be the end of it.
Yeah.
And I would, I just think it has absolutely nothing to do with anyone else whatsoever. The same happened to me, by the way. Yeah. And that's why I feel quite passionate about it, because I had a similar conversation. And yeah, it can be frustrating, but that's what we want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like to
Okay.
say it's finding the right forums that want you for you, not your
Mm.
how cheap they can get you for because you have a nice little pension in the background.
It is, and I also think as well, when you consider what the average wage is in the UK, it varies around the country, but I think on average it's around K a year. I talked about salary expectations. Sometimes we've spoken to individuals whose expectations are completely unrealistic, and trying to sort of map that across into the other factors that you need to consider as well, whether that's travel, you know, all those other things, because of course when you leave, all of a sudden you have to, well, you've got doctor, dentist, all those things, gym membership, and things that you just, yeah, it all adds up as we know. Yeah, it all adds up, absolutely. And so you've got all those things to consider. And yes, what we have seen certainly this year, despite the recent unemployment figures, what we've seen is an uptick in demand for our people, and it's great. It's not just great for us, but it's really good for them because, of course, we're able to say that you finish on the Friday, on the Monday, here's an opportunity that you could potentially just drop straight into. But it's not that simple. But that's what we want to do.
Yeah, but at least
Okay.
there is a path to it now rather than kind of trying to do a stepping stone thing of trying to
Of course.
find the right fit and then eventually not finding that first time, second time, maybe third time
Completely.
around.
Yeah, completely.
You
Yeah.
kind of just learning as you go, and it's the you've almost created that proven route now that
Well, we're trying to. We're trying to. There's still more work to do. Actually, to be honest, there's still more work to do. I mean, we would like to expand the network of individuals that are essentially around the country that feed into us. We would love to have conversations with anyone that would be keen to get involved, and we can talk about what that means. There are financially, we want to try and make it worth their while as well. Of course, we do. But building that network, what we would call a sort of like a lily pad approach of individuals that understand where these jobs are perhaps required and where our people can fit, and we could be there to help and work with them to try and grow that. So yeah, so there's lots of opportunity, Katie, hopefully. And we hope that we will be there. We want to be the first port of call, quite frankly. And that doesn't mean we'll always get them a job, but we'll certainly do our best to help.
yeah, yeah, like you said, at least there's somewhere to go and ask for that help now.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's right.
And like you say, that it's only going to get bigger and better with companies like HSBC and Google hanging their hats on it as
Mhm.
well. It's yeah,
Fingers crossed.
there's so much benefit from our core. I mean, as the army as a whole, but our core we're so diverse in what we can do.
Mm.
And you speak to people that have left, and some of them have ended up really doing some really weird and wonderful jobs. And people have said to me, "How the hell have you ended up doing what you're doing?" What you did,
I know. No, of course
and
not. Of
you
course.
just, what, give it a go. Let's see what happens. And it,
Exactly. I've got one more plug. One more plug, actually, Katie. I should say for the reserves,
yeah,
for our reservist community. Increasingly we are helping more MI reservists as well,
okay, yeah.
and that in itself, they bring a different skill set, amazing individuals
They're
who
a
are
fascinating group in the core.
leaning in absolutely, and I think I have more and more respect for them after leaving, because I just think, how on earth can you balance what you do with a day job and everything else that's going on in your world? So yeah, so there's an expanding group of a community of individuals that we are supporting there as well, which again is also really rewarding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because every I mean, I've worked with a lot of in-corps reservists. There was quite an upkick of it at one point, and the backgrounds are just crazy different.
Mm.
Everyone from guys that had made their fortune in tech and retired at 35 and just wanted a hobby, so joined the reserve.
Lucky them.
Yeah,
Lucky them.
to people that left school or did it through uni and just still want to do it but
Yeah.
didn't join it full time, or up and down the country, tax inspectors, the works. There's a real melting pot, I think, because I think our corps does have that tendency to attract just anyone and everyone from the weird and wonderful to
Certainly do. Certainly do.
just
And you know, they always want to help as well.
yeah,
They're another source of support for people leaving. You know, I've lost count of the number of times that I've lent in on a particular reservist who said, "Look, I work for let's say Microsoft, or you let me know if you need any support,
yeah,
and if I can be of any assistance." They are absolutely falling over themselves, and I think that's incredible. As I said, if they just keep going back to this, I'm sorry, I sound like a bit of a scratch record, but operationalizing the network is something that what we've done. It was there before, but it was all ad hoc. But quite frankly, when you overlay a commercial, um, I guess, a plan above what we're doing, it drives different behaviors. And of course, that's not just in us, but also in the people that are supporting us. And so and that's part of the reason why we want to do it properly. We want to do it better. And we have that,
yeah,
I'm going to say, the unrelenting pursuit of just making sure that our community are supported to the best of our ability and those of our network.
yeah. Because I think we're all the same, but we don't want to see any one of our own struggle. I think that's why you'll always get a reply, whether it be help or a signpost to someone else, because we don't want to see anyone fail. Not really. And I think that's where we build a really, really good network. Oh, no worries. See, hardest man to get hold of in NATO. You see? Yeah.